In 1962, during the Cold War, tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union grew more severe. The U.S. had stationed nuclear missiles in both Italy and Turkey, which the Russian government perceived as a threat. The Russians only had a few intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs, however, their accuracy had made their effectiveness highly questionable. That being said, the Russians were only capable of striking the European allies of the U.S. and most of Alaska if they had launched any of their intermediate or medium range missiles. Russia had begun to try to find a strategic point to station their missiles, and that location was the country of Cuba. Cuba, being 90 miles off the coast of Florida, made it the prime location for missile launches against the United States. Also, the United States had attempted to invade and overthrow the Cuban government multiple times. After discussions between the Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev and the Cuban leader Fidel Castro in May 1962, Cuba had accepted the Russian request to station missiles in their country as a method to deter any further aggressions from the Americans. Thus, Operation Anadir was launched. Russians sent to Cuba for Operation Anadir began to secretly build nuclear missile facilities in Cuba, as well as transporting the missiles themselves. In October 1962, American spy planes that were flying over Cuba had spotted and photographed the missile sites under construction. These photos were sent directly to Washington, D.C. After being briefed, President Kennedy had formed a National Security Council formerly known as XCOM. The members of XCOM began to suggest many plausible solutions ranging from diplomacy to invading Cuba. President Kennedy was not willing to negotiate with Russia. Kennedy also knew that any military action, such as an invasion, would cause a nuclear war. After debating what solution to go with, XCOM had agreed to set up a naval blockade to prevent any more nuclear missiles to enter Cuba. During the blockade, the U.S. and Soviet Union were blocked in heated negotiations. The United States was also put into DEFCON 3, one of the highest threat levels the country could be in. After some time, the Russians finally agreed to publicly dismantle their missiles in Cuba and send them back to the Soviet Union, while the Americans secretly agreed to remove their missiles stationed in Italy and Turkey. The Cuban Missile Crisis was one of the closest events to plunge the world into nuclear war in history.